Hello and welcome back to the Eden Road podcast, where on today's show we're going to be reflecting on a 5-star performance against Luton last weekend, and also we'll be briefly looking ahead to Everton on Saturday. Joining me for this episode is Craig. Craig, all good, mate?
Fantastic, mate. On top of the world at the moment.
Good stuff, good stuff. Dan, how are we?
Amazing, yeah. Can just enjoy the rest of the season now, so all good.
Exactly that. Just before we get going, guys, remember to drop a comment down below. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Eden Road on Twitter and at Eden Road Pod on Instagram. We'll start with tweet of the week as we always do. There was a few this week that I bookmarked, most of them good, some of them to do with some other stuff. We're going to talk about the Twickenham rumour that started circulating yesterday. Obviously very strange. So Kenzema definitely gets an honourable mention, suggesting that moving to Twickenham would be the only way for Brentford to become a big club. But we'll dissect that a bit later on. But I think tweet of the week this week, boys, has to go to the one and only Nottingham Forest FC. What were the initial reactions to that? I mean, when it happened, I still think they've not tweeted anything since then. Obviously, the fallout, the media coverage of it has been huge. It's just, I'll go to you first, Craig, and then we'll go to Dan. What was your initial reaction to seeing that? Because it's nothing we've ever seen before.
Phenomenal. Fantastic moment in the Twitter history, in football Twitter history. It is officially peaked that a football club have broken. They've broken down. They're officially loose in the world. They've broken down. I thought it was brilliant. And it was so, the more I think about it, the more I think about that tweet and them kicking off, the more I think about the playoff final that they had with Huddersfield, when Huddersfield got absolutely robbed of some horrendous decisions, and VAR was used for that playoff final, wasn't it, as well, I believe. So, absolutely robbed of some horrendous decisions, and I think it couldn't have happened to a better club. And I hope they get relegated. I so hope they go down.
You sound like Ty from AFTV. Dan, how did you see
it? You're a small club. You're insignificant. You're going down.
How do you see it?
Well, I mean, their owner's a bit of a nutcase, isn't he? So it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, to suggest that the VAR is a Luton fan and there's some kind of conspiracy against them is just wild. Like, they're not special enough to have a kind of conspiracy against them. Obviously, everyone to different extents has been on the wrong end of decisions this season. And I don't think it's down to there being some kind of agenda against each club. I think it's just very hard to achieve consistency when each referee, it seems, has a different view of what they perceive to be a clear error or what they concede to be a foul. And it distorts the whole thing. And if Forest go down, it won't really. I don't buy that it'll be because they were denied 2 penalties in a game against Everton. It's probably because the whole season they've not been good enough. Yeah. So I do hope they go down as well, and I hope Luton stay up because I think Luton deserve it more than they do, especially after they've had this deduction and they've essentially been deducted points for cheating this season, but they have the cheek to do that. So yeah.
They have posted another tweet. Nottingham Forest has today submitted a formal request to the PGMOL to release into the public domain the audio recordings between officials during yesterday's match against Everton at Goodison Park, and then they just use Ashley Young.
What are they expecting? The guy on VAR to be like, "Oh yeah, we can't give this. I'm a Luton fan." Like, what do they expect to find on these recordings?
Sorry, lads. Luton lost 5-1. Can't give this one.
I was listening to Match of the Day as well, and they made the point that the best result for a Luton fan out of Everton and Forest would have been a draw anyway. So it just didn't really make sense. But the thing is, I watched the 3 penalty incidents, all Ashley Young. I saw his post-match interview as well. I don't know if you boys have seen that. It was absolutely brilliant. But well, I think with all 3, they've got a case, especially the one on Hudson-Odoi in the second half. I think that was the most stonewall for me. But the phrasing of the tweet, we will now consider its options. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, what options do you have?
I'm not sure they have options. Yeah,
it's just bizarre. It was the most. Literally.
Did you see Ashley Young posted a tweet out today as well? And it was just a screenshot of Justin Timberlake, "Cry Me a River."
No, we love it. We love the shit house, and we've got a bit of a rivalry with Forest. So, on the one hand, I would like to see them get relegated just because their fans are a bit deluded. But on the other hand, we've had this conversation on the podcast before. I do like it when you have those fixtures in the calendar that you look forward to, and you're like, okay, that's a game that I'm looking forward to. Like Forest away now is one of those because we've kind of built that. Well, not really like it's a rivalry just because of the Championship days and some of the bad blood between the clubs when we played in recent times. But I don't know. I'd
And now
like
with the
Luton to stay
foam
up.
as well. Now with Heisen moving the foam and
I know,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
It all adds to the allure of that fixture. I want Luton to stay up, and if it's going to be at the expense of anyone, I think it should be Forest. I mean, the Clattenburg stuff is column in the Daily Mail. It's just like the fact that they've got a referees analyst employed by the club, like he's earning a salary from what? What is he doing? It's just
He
like,
called them on Friday to say that Stuart Atwell's a Luton fan, apparently.
yeah, it's absolutely mental, fucking crazy. Anyway, let's move on to Luton. First of all, boys, what an away day for you both. Craig, I'll come to you first. Reaction to the result.
I kind of left the ground a bit speechless. When I woke up Saturday morning, I did not think that we'd be coming away from Kenilworth Road having won 5-1. I was confident going into the game, thinking maybe we'll nick it, I don't know, 1-0 or 2-1. I was certain they was going to score, but then when we got to the game and we was playing, they just didn't look like they was going to score until we gifted them an opportunity at the end. I said to you guys as well, that was the closest performance to perfection we've had this season, with the way that we took our chances, we was creating chances, we was flowing through the areas of the pitch from defence to attack. It was just fantastic, and it was a complete surprise, which I think is why it helped with the atmosphere. It was fantastic as well, proper away end.
Yeah, well, I'll ask you that, but I think it was such a surprise, especially because I remember, I think I tweeted out on the account after Aston Villa. I said if we beat Sheffield United next week, we're pretty much safe. And a few people replied saying, "Why are you so confident?" And I wasn't confident and that's what like it makes it even more of a surprise, because I was going into that Luton game knowing, okay, we've got the 3 points against Sheffield United. Wasn't the prettiest of performances, and we were going to have to play a lot better to get a result at Luton, who we know throughout their time in the Premier League this season are a team that never say die attitude, and they've got that, especially at Kenilworth Road. But to go there and to dominate from start to finish, pretty much, Dan, it was such a surprise and best performance of the season, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can't really criticize anyone, I don't think. I thought we were brilliant. And it's strange because I've seen a lot of Luton games this season as well, and they are always in games. They do always tend to score. But even when they came to Brentford, I didn't think they were very good. So I think two of their worst performances of the season have probably come against us. And we have something to do with that. I mean, I was convinced that it was such a big game for them. I would have probably taken a draw before the game, because that would have kept us a certain amount of points ahead. And I thought that would make us okay. But I thought even their fans, I didn't think were that up for it. I mean, I suppose their team didn't give them anything to shout about, but I just thought it'd be so much more difficult than it ended up being. And you can't criticize anyone defensively going forward. I thought, yeah, we were brilliant.
Yeah, talk to me about the away end, boys, because I wasn't there. I was in recovery from surgery, so wasn't at Luton and won't be at Everton. But talk to me about the away end, because I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying it was a proper Brentford away. Obviously, the taps allowance made it so that only a certain section of the fan base could be in that away end. It was only about 1,500 there, but I've heard, Craig, that it was the best one, and I think I've seen a few Luton fans even say that we were some of the best set of fans that they've had there this season.
I think that the performance of the result has helped that massively, because if we was going there and we was, holding on by the skin of our teeth, we probably wouldn't be as loud as we were when we was there. But even before kickoff, the low roof, everyone knows that's been to Kenilworth Road knows that the low roof, it's old school style ground, that it just holds atmosphere anyway. I mean, you can just hear even just chatter and things like that amongst the fans. You can hear it because of how the away end holds the noise. But it was brilliant from even just through the warm-ups, that it was great. And that, Dan, you said that their fans weren't really anything to write about, and I think that's because we was just on top straight away. As soon as the whistle went, we was on top of them, and they couldn't really get behind them because there was just nothing to get behind. We dominated, but the funny thing is, the stats show that they had more of the ball. That's divulging a little bit. It was a cracking away end. Fantastic. And I hope we have more like that. I would rather we took a reduced capacity at grounds to have more Brentford fans there and have atmospheres like that than have 3,000 tickets away at Liverpool and have one of the worst away ends I've ever been in. But Saturday was phenomenal. It was a proper throwback to old school Brentford. Just Brentford fans there, enjoying themselves, having a great day.
Yeah, definitely beats. I remember doing United away, and there were some home fans in the away in that time. I think it's good that you mentioned the fact that we started so aggressively, because I don't think I've seen us start a game that aggressively this season and so well right off the bat. Dan, KLP has a chance. I remember messaging you guys as I was watching it, saying he has to put that away when it was 0-0. I think Brian feeds him in, and he kind of takes a bit too much time, gets it on his left peg, but just shoots wide. But then the finish from Wissa, I mean, what a unbelievable first time finish, Dan. On it, he does have that in his locker, and I think we've had a conversation a few times about if there's a player going through 1-on-1 in our squad, you'd probably like to have Wissa on the end of it as opposed to a Brian or an Ivan Toney. But just talk me through that first goal from the away end.
Yeah, I mean, it was at the other end to us, but yeah, it was a brilliant finish, top corner. I think he hit it first time. And like we always say, you'd back him in those scenarios, but that was definitely one of his better goals. I think I prefer him down the middle than on the left. Obviously, last week we saw him on the left, and I feel like with KLP on the left and him down the middle, I feel like it just worked a lot better, because I mean, you do want him in the middle on the end of those chances, and I think he's got 10 now. I was surprised to see that's the first time he scored 2 in a game for us. But if he gets more regular starts and more regular games, and he can stay on the current form that he's on, then I can see him building on that in the next season or two, to get 15 or 20. He could be that kind of striker if he just, became a bit more consistent and got more starts down the middle. And obviously with Ivan Toney, likely leaving, there's a chance to, stake your claim as the first choice up there.
You could definitely see the difference from Wissa playing up top to Morpay. I think when we've spoken about Brentford, especially at the start of the season, when we had that front three, we were talking about how dynamic they were and how fluid it was up top in terms of the three being interchangeable. And now with KLP on the left, Wissa through the middle, and Brian down the right, there was a couple of moments where KLP was on the right or Brian was on the left, they were all interchanging at the same time. And when you have Neil up top, he's a different kind of striker. But I feel like Wissa, he probably holds the ball up a little bit better than Wissa, but just his pace, he lacks so much pace. So like those balls that come through, he's just not going to get on the end of them. There was one against Sheffield United where I think he was going to be through. Maybe there was even one in the Luton game towards the end where I just don't think he had the legs to quite get there. Neil Mope I'm talking about. But with Wissa, you know that he's got the legs and he can finish as well. So it's kind of a better deal in that respect. The second, Craig, a little bit scrappy, but we take it. Brian's effort that canned off the bar moments earlier would have been a really special goal. But just in terms of that first half, seeing the kind of football that we played, and even the football in the second half that we played, which we're going to talk about as well, we should have been 3 or 4 up.
Oh, at a minimum. I'm sure I said to you at half time it could be 5 or 6 or 4 or 5. I mean, we were so dominant in both halves. We were so dominant in that first half. And at 1-0, before we get that one in the 46th minute to go 2 up, everyone around me is going, how is this still 1-0? How is this still 1-0? We've had so many chances. Like you just touched on, Brian hits the bar. KLP had a few chances, and he had one where their defenders made a good clearance, or he got his head to it, put it behind for a corner, but that was sailing into the top corner as well. It was just from, like I said, we said from minute one, we just came out and we just went for it, and it was refreshing to see us just attack with such fluidity. It was lovely, brilliant.
Yeah, and I think in the second half as well, I was watching it and I was thinking, right, we're going to have to sustain a little bit of pressure from Luton in this first 10 minutes. Bit of a cliche, but when your side's 2-0 down, that next goal is so important, and whoever gets the next goal usually goes on to either get an equaliser or win the game. But it like we came out in the second half and it was just the same of what we had in the first. Ethan gets our third on his return to the starting 11. I know that you wanted to speak about Pinnock, Dan, so I'll let you take it away. How pivotal is he to our team?
Oh, he's brilliant. I think he's very underrated from everyone that's not a Brentford fan. Like extremely underrated. Even obviously Luton didn't offer a lot, but even when Luton were going forward, he had Carlton Morris in his pocket. the whole game. And he was winning duels against him, and that was their outlet, and he prevented that. And I think you can just tell he's a class above. And I couldn't believe that it was only his third ever yellow card for Brentford and his third foul of the season, which is insane for a centre back.
Crazy.
Who's played so many games for us as well. So yeah, and it is nice to see him score because he got that recognition right in front of the away end on his first start back. And yeah, I genuinely think he's probably top 5 centre backs in the league. And I've told a few other people this who aren't Brentford fans, and they think it's wild what I'm saying. But obviously there's a few obvious ones. I think the Arsenal centre backs are good. Van Dijk's obviously very good, but he's not far behind them. And it's difficult because obviously people don't watch him every week. But I literally think he is that good. And if he didn't play for Jamaica a few years ago, I think he should definitely be in the England squad. Obviously, maybe he went a bit too early with giving up on England if he was ever waiting for England. But yeah, he's just brilliant.
Yeah, especially because we're short on that kind of left-sided centre half. If Maguire or Stones is going to be the kind of shoe-in, it would have been nice to see him. But yeah, 100%. I love the moment where he's celebrating, and I think someone pushes him like towards the away end. To think that we could have had Ethan. Well, I don't know the extent of the injury, but I remember saying after Wolves, when we kept him on the pitch for absolutely no reason whatsoever, when he was limping around. I don't know if that made his injury any worse, but I mean, if it did, to think we could have had him for a few more games before, because he is so pivotal to that team. I'm not sure if before the international break we would have dropped as many points as we ended up doing. But 2 more goals to talk about, and then we'll get into some individual player performances. We can't talk about KLP because he gets the 4th. And I think that's what his performance deserved. You touched on that one in the first half, Craig, where I think that was top corner bound before the defender kind of gets a really good flick to just divert it away from the goal. But we talk about KLP a lot, and I think rightly so, because he's been in a difficult position this season in that we've had so many injuries, and he's, as a left winger, has been that person to fill in on the left-hand side, playing left wing back when that's not really a strong position, or even playing right wing back at times. But I think Craig, all he needs, especially from now until the end of the season, and we'll talk about kind of past season as well, because we've got Kevin Schade coming back to full fitness, who we'll talk about next as well. But all KLP needs, I think, is that run of games in his favoured position in the team, and we'll really start seeing him coming into his own. And we've kind of seen it in flashes already.
Oh yeah, 100%. But give him his dues. He stepped in when we needed him to play left wing back or right wing back. So give him his dues. He stepped up and he did his job. But to see him playing in that forward position and how he was so, I'm not going to say clinical, because obviously he had a few chances and unfortunately they got blocked, or he just missed the target. But again, he was put into his natural position and he just creates chances, and he just creates chaos for defenders. You could see that they couldn't keep up with him. He was stretching their defense, and he was all over him. And arguably for the first sort of 25 minutes, it looked like if anyone was going to score, it was going to be KLP. Dan, I don't know if you agree, but if anyone was going to score, it was going to be KLP. And then Whistler obviously picks out the top corner. But I always feel like we celebrate 4th goals more than we celebrate any other goal that we score. But we'd just scored the 3rd one. Ethan had just put it in the top corner from a header. And we're still sort of celebrating and singing after that 3rd goal, that the 4th goal comes so quickly that there's almost the over celebration again of that 4th goal. And everyone was so happy and so relieved. And the celebrations from the players were brilliant as well for that goal.
Yeah, just having a quick look at KLP stats, because I just wanted to make a point that and I know Brian and Bumo's similar as well in terms of players in our team that will stand up a man, and instead of like a Roslev who's keen to pass it all the time. I think KLP and Brian as well, specifically in this game, but more KLP, when he picks up the ball in space, more often than not, he's got one thing on his mind, and that's being his man. And I just had a look; he's in the top 10 percentile of dribbles per 90 in the Premier League this season, and I love that. He kind of reminds me of. I've always said it. It's a bit of a rogue shout. My mates grill me for it. I love Harvey Barnes. I think Harvey Barnes is a fantastic player, just because he's so direct, he's so quick, and you know that every time he gets the ball, he's going to try and go past his man. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Harvey Barnes, maybe with a bit less pace and a bit more finesse to his game, potentially. But it's like we haven't seen KLP have a sustained run in the team when he's playing left wing in that position. And I feel like from now until the end of the season, it would be great if he builds on that goal, builds on that performance, and we see more of him in that position. You mentioned the celebrations. There was a big one at the end. Kevin Schade comes off the bench to top it all off to get his 5th. So happy for him. But again, Dan, the build-up, I was watching back on Match of the Day. It's just silky football that I haven't seen from Brentford since the very start of the season. Brian picks it up, jinks past. I think it was Barkley that he goes past pretty easily. Feeds Jan out through, yes, does the Owusu celebration. And then Schade caps off what was an amazing day. But Dan, just so happy for him to come back from injury, gets the assist against Sheffield United and gets the goal today. Oh, not today, Saturday.
They were queuing up for that goal because Morpay would have stuck it in if Schade didn't. He looks quite sharp. He looks like he's picking up from where he left off, which I was a bit worried about because I thought last season he took a little bit of time to get into his stride, and he was only just getting into his stride when he got injured. So it's good news that he is there and he is performing almost at the level he was at. Obviously, it's hard to see because he's only had limited minutes, but I think I would probably keep him on the bench for now. I think KLP's earned the right to be ahead of him for now. But again, I'd love to see him come off the bench most games, and I'd love to see what he can do. And then him and KLP, if they're competing for a position next season, I think that could be quite exciting. So I think both of them could have a very high ceiling, and they could be 2 great options on the left next season.
Yeah. Let's talk about some players. I think we should start with Brian Mbeumo because I think that was probably his best performance since coming back from injury. 2 assists. I think I saw that he got 3 chances created as well, but just like an ever-present danger down that right-hand side. He made that 5th goal. He made Wissa's first as well, obviously. And I want to ask you, Craig, in the light of the tweet that I saw mentioned that got a bit of traction about sort of how much would we sell Brian Mbeumo for? Considering he's contracted till 2026, I said, and considering the kind of fluctuation in the transfer market and how much Chelsea are driving up prices, I'd have said 40 million plus for him. He's definitely a player I don't see staying at Brentford for too much longer. I feel like he's probably going to have quite a lot of admirers this season, and I know that with Salah potentially leaving Liverpool, I feel like that could be a really good fit for Brian Mbeumo. It's probably not on the levels of Salah, and I'm not sure whoever get to those levels, but in terms of a Liverpool Liverpool right winger, he kind of fits that bill. He's good in the press, get past the man, he can pick a pass as well. But just talk to me about his performance since he's come back from injuries. I think he's probably our most important player, has been this season for sure. So yeah, talk to me about Brian.
I know that you've noted it, that we're going to go on to it anyway, but I think that and I posted a tweet and a lot of people seem to be agreeing with it. He is more important to the team than Ivan Toney is. The injury that broke the camel's back was Brian getting injured at Brighton in December. That's when it all collapsed. That's when it hit the fan. That's when it all collapsed. And he is one of those players that will always occupy more than one defender, which is why him and Ivan Toney have so much success, because of how they both occupy defenses. So they can just run them ragged. The way that we did this weekend with that front 3. He is so influential to the way that we play that losing him would be a bigger loss to the team, and was a bigger loss to the team when he got injured than when we inevitably lose Ivan Toney again, considering how long he was out for with his ban. He's just so good. He's so good. And I think he could easily step into that Liverpool role. I think he's got a high ceiling, and having the better players around him. We're talking about Mo Salah, who's like Premier League legend. Let's be real, with his Liverpool tenure as well. But he's got a very high ceiling. He's still not very old, still quite young. He's got a lot of football ahead of him, and with that higher caliber of player around him, I don't see why he couldn't, push and be like a top Premier League player, top Champions League player. He's got it in him, but I hope we keep him for as long as we possibly can.
100%. But if we did sell him, and I know that the recruitment team at Brentford has gotten a lot of stick, especially over the last couple of seasons. If we did sell him, say in the summer or next summer, and we sold Ivan Toney in the summer as well, it's another 2 examples of Brentford picking up players for relatively little. and selling them on for massive fees. And you need those to come across with a sweeping statement like Brentford's recruitment team has dropped off. You only need those two sales for it to be evidence that they haven't dropped off, because you're making back so much of the money that you spent. Dan, how much do you reckon for Brian if he doesn't sign a new contract?
That's the difficulty, isn't it? Because we could be in the same situation this time next year as we are with Tony now, where we either sell him or he plays his last season and potentially goes for free, which we wouldn't want to happen. In terms of his actual value, I'd say a lot more than 40, but it would depend when we decide to sell him. I think we could probably go for 60 odd in this summer, but I don't think we'd want to lose him and Tony at the same time. Then I think his value slowly decreases then towards the end of his contract. And obviously it depends where we are in the league next January, whether we're opening to let him go in January or not. But if I was at Brentford, I'd be trying to get him to sign a contract right now.
100%.
And sort that out this summer. And if we can do that, that would be brilliant. That would be an amazing piece of business.
100% agree.
It would take a phenomenal bid for us to sell anyone that pivotal to the team in a winter transfer window. I would have to say the same way we was talking. I'd have to say the same figures that we was talking about for Ivan Toney in the winter, that they'd have to be stupid odds like 80, 90, 100 million for him, for us to even consider getting rid of him in January. Like, I don't think there's any way in which we could do that.
Yeah, and I think the staff at Brentford will be definitely trying to get him to sign that new contract. I don't know how much interest. I've not seen any rumours, but I feel like with every good performance that he has, you see the online noise about the Liverpool move specifically. I've seen a lot of accounts saying this guy would be a really good replacement for Mo Salah, but we shall see. I'm sure the recruitment team at Brentford are doing their best to try and get him to sign a new contract. A couple more players that I wanted to talk about. Jensen, I think he had like 6 nutmegs in that game. I think that was one of his best games in recent weeks. He was absolutely phenomenal. But the two that I want to pick out, Sergio Reguilon, for the people that doubted him, and we said this after the last one, but for the people that said, and I quote, he is one of the worst fullbacks in the league. If that person listens to this podcast, you know who you are. But he said he was one of the worst fullbacks in the league after the performances against West Ham. He's phenomenal. He's so good. The delivery with his left foot, and I didn't catch it on the last podcast, Dan, but you made such a great point when you said if you combined Rico Henry's defensive capabilities with Sergio Reguilon's attacking output, you probably have the perfect left back, and that's bang on the money. Because again, Dan, he was sensational against Luton on Saturday.
Yeah, the only real thing with him, obviously, he did let us down against Burnley, and I think everyone kind of accepts that. But generally, yeah, he's solid. You can tell that he might have some defensive vulnerabilities at times, but generally his play is very good, and I think he makes up for it in the assists he gets. I mean, those crosses and most of those assists have been without Ivan Toney on the pitch. And if you had some kind of target man up there, that would be a dream for him to have those kinds of crosses coming in. And it's a shame. I just can't see him and Henry fitting in the same team together. But it's such a shame because he's a very good option to have. But I just can't see them both going together. But I think he'll earn some kind of move in the summer based on his performances. But he might have to go maybe more mid-table in the Premier League.
He looks like he's enjoying himself. Like, he looks like he's enjoying himself. Watching him in the celebrations at Villa when we went 3-2 up, and then how he's celebrating against Sheffield United, and then again, like, he was the one sort of geeing up the crowd. I think he was the one that actually pushed Ethan towards the away end when he scored. He looks like he's enjoying himself and loving playing football again. And when you get players that have got a few loan moves and you start to see them, playing their trade and enjoying the fact that they're doing it, it does feel good. Yeah, I'm on the cusp of falling in love with a lone player, and it's becoming very dangerous. So I hope he drops a stinker now we're safe, so that I can't wait for him to go in the summer.
Yeah, I would say, and I think it was a problem when he was at Tottenham, maybe not so much at Man United, just because they didn't have any left backs. I think that the reason that that United cancelled his loan or just let him go was because they thought Tyrell Malacia was going to come back, and then they had Luke Shaw fit again as well. But neither of them have featured like since then. But he is quite rash defensively sometimes. He can fly into tackles when he doesn't really need to. But what you mentioned about if Ivan Toney was there, Dan, there was the cross in the first half, which was started off by a counter attack, and he picked up the ball sort of just going into their defensive third, and he whips one to the back post. And I was thinking at the time, don't stop this counter attack, make up the ground and go forward because you've got space to run into. But he whips one round to the back post and just puts it perfectly on KLP's head, and Kaminsky made an amazing save. And there was another one in the second half when he whips it on the half volley towards the back post again, and I think Chris Ayer heads it maybe onto the post, or I think Kaminsky kind of tips it onto the post. But yeah, no, his delivery with his left foot is unreal. And I think, like you said last episode, if you combine his attacking with Rico's defensive work, you got the perfect fullback. Mikkel Damsgaard, Craig, I'll let you handle this section because I know you're his biggest fan, so go for it.
I feel like after all the support I gave him, I'm starting to feel rewarded. These last 3 games that he has played, he was man of the match against Villa. He was so unlucky to be wronged by a horrendous VAR decision against Sheffield United to get his first goal, to then again master. What's not the right word? I'm just going to say control. I was going to say master of the midfield, but Jensen had a good game as well. But he's just becoming that player that we all thought we were signing after that Euros tournament that he had. He's got a goal in him. It's coming soon. And when it comes, I will be the happiest person there. I'm so glad that he is playing well. And I'm also glad that other Brentford fans are starting to notice the potential that he has. I mean, he's only 23. He's only 23. He's got so much ahead of him as well, so much football ahead of him, providing he can stay fit. And I'm so glad for him. I'm so glad for him that he's doing well now.
Yeah, just needs to get that level of consistency. He did almost get his goal, forced a save out of Kaminsky early on in the second half. But even like his pre-assist for Brian's unbelievable assist, where he kind of clips it over the top, and Brian knocks it back across to the back stick for KLP to tap in, was fantastic. And that's two performances now where he's been one of our best, if not the best player on the pitch. So long may that continue. Any other players you want to give a special shout out to? I do want to talk about the formation, and then maybe anything else from Luton you guys wanted to mention. But any other players that stood out?
I just want to mention Janelt. I know we've spoken about him quite a lot recently, but we all talk about the hole that Norgard, creates when he's injured or he's unavailable. But Janelt has stepped in there phenomenally again these last few games since Norgard's been injured, and I couldn't fault him again. All right, he was a little bit flat-footed with the goal that they scored. Thankfully, it didn't really mean anything, but he stepped in there. He's filled that gap again, and I think that Janelt's still one of the best bargains we've ever had.
100 Premier League appearances for Brentford, first ever to do it. That's a good milestone. That's an amazing milestone. And Janelt has deputised really well for the time that Christian Norgard was out. But I've said it before in the pod. I might get a bit of hate for this. I do feel like Janelt is a player that we could potentially upgrade on. And I know people are going to bite at that because he has been really good this season. But I just feel like sometimes when he's on the ball, I think he gives it away too often. His passing isn't up to scratch in the same way that Jensen's and Damsgaard is. But I don't know. Dan, what do you think? I don't want to be too harsh on him because like we just said, he's been amazing this season and he's like a fan favourite as well. I love the guy and you can tell that he cares and he gives us all in every single game. But I've always thought that in terms of that midfield, and we do have a good midfield with lots of midfielders when they're fit and available, he's a player that I look at and think if we want to go to the next level, maybe he's one that we could upgrade on.
He's a 6 or 7 every week, and that's not a criticism. He's just dependable. Quite solid, and he's always available, which is why he's played 100 games more than anyone else. And in a season where we've had so many injuries, it's nice to have someone around who can be dependable like that. And I think he's growing into one of the more leaders of the team. And obviously, when he was first signed, he wasn't expected to come in as quick as he did. It was at the same time as when Norgard got injured in the Championship. And so ever since he signed, he's been quite a key player in the team. So I think we need to have him around. But yeah, I agree that we shouldn't always need to rely on him to start. He's a good space filler, I think, when we do have players out. And,
Yeah.
Even looking at the Nets game, there's an argument to say that you do give him a rest now, bring Norgard in for him. And then I think Damsgaard needs to keep playing to demonstrate, that he can have that sustained run of form and keep it going into next season.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point you make. I think because he's so versatile as well, he can play a few different positions across that kind of back line / midfield. Definitely, I'm not saying we should sell him, not saying that at all. I'm just saying in terms of him starting every week, I feel like we could upgrade in that position, but keep him around obviously for his versatility and things like that. A word on the formation. I wanted to ask you both because from Sheffield United, you could definitely tell that the four at the back was something that we'd not tried in a very long time. Like that, watching the Sheffield United game, it was not a great game of football, and we didn't really look that threatening going forward compared to Luton. It was almost like every time we went forward in that second half, we would create an opening. But it was surprising to see that level of attacking fluidity, especially in that front three that I mentioned earlier. In only our second game since going back to a back four, does it make you question, Craig, a little bit why Thomas Frank hasn't utilised Ayer at right back more? I know that with the two central defenders that have been available in Zanka and Collins for most of the season, and Ayer, by the way, I want to say again, Ayer's been phenomenal the last few weeks, and he was brilliant again against Luton. But it did make me think, like, because we've had this conversation many times, especially during that period when we were doing five at the back week in, week out, when we had the personnel available and he still wasn't switching it. But now we've had 2 wins since the international break. We've played a 4 twice and we've won twice. Kind of did make me question, could we have done this a bit earlier? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the amount of times that we spoke about the possibility of going to a back four and using him as a right back, but never did. I don't know why it's taken so long to do this. He's obviously put his trust in Mads, and Mads does have good games in him. He's had a few good games in this spell of fixtures where we've been having some success. I mean, we're unbeaten in 5 now, which is fantastic considering the fixtures that we've had, as well as the run that we were on beforehand. I'm unsure. I'm unsure. Everyone thought that Ayer could have done it. We've seen that he can do it. We're just kind of, it's a moment of wonder as to why he hasn't been used in that formation.
Yeah,
more.
I think so. Just What do you reckon, Dan?
If there's one criticism of Thomas Frank, I do think sometimes it's a bit slow to change a formation and get us out of a rut sometimes when we're in it. And obviously, in the Premier League years, we've not had too many sustained long bad periods of form. But I do think when we're in it, sometimes he finds it a bit difficult to change things. Well, I think now I'm starting to trust Nathan Collins again, so I'm much more comfortable with him as centre back at the moment. And
It's
again,
a risky game.
I want him to play again now every game until the end of the season to show us that going into next season he can keep up that form. And then I think honestly next season I think Ben Mee has probably seen his day now. I think it's Ayer, Collins, and Pinnock, and maybe a new centre back next season. So if we've got Pinnock and Collins as centre back, for example, I think Ayer can easily fit in a right back, and it'll be interesting to see whether we prefer Hickey there or Ayer there next season. But it's a good dilemma to have, because obviously if something happened to Rico Henry, Hickey could go to the left, I could go to the right, and we might have adequate cover there. So I definitely think Ayer's again on a good run of form. I think with him it's just injuries sometimes creep up on him. So again, I want to see him stay fit for a sustained period. And now's the time.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. It will be good when we do like our end of season review to have this conversation about sort of what our ideal back line is, what our ideal midfield is. I feel I saw a tweet the other day that I think Besotted tweeted out that the areas that Lee Dykes and the recruitment staff are looking to improve on is centre half, full back, and in midfield. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially now with players like Collins and Pinnock and Ayer and potentially Rico all being fit again next season, how the transfers are going to change what we think might be our strongest back line. But that's a conversation that I'm looking forward to when we do our kind of like end of season review and what we feel like our ideal lineups are. Anything else from the Luton game? Because we've got a couple of things we can chat about before Everton that I wanted to talk about. But anything else from the Luton game that you two wanted to mention?
No,
Just what a shithole Luton is, man.
I'd love them to stay up though. I do want them to stay up. I think they deserve it, and their journey is similar to us in recent years in many ways. And yeah, I'd love to see Forest or Everton go down instead of them. I think that would be a great story, and we can come back next year.
Yeah, 100%. I just feel like Everton. It would be so funny if they were down. They're such a miserable football club. It would be really nice to see their misery compiled.
After their result yesterday.
I would rather Forest went down, but if it was had to be one of those two that went down instead of Luton, I'd save Luton every time.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about Ivan Toney, because there's been a bit of chat that I wanted to kind of talk about. I saw a tweet from TW8 Casuals. Shout out to them, asking on Twitter if people would be bothered seeing Ivan again in a Brentford shirt. And just in general, I feel like there was a lot of back and forth on Twitter following the Luton game, considering how amazing our front three were. You've even said, Craig, that you think we're a better team without Ivan. So I'll let you explain that. But first, Dan, how do you feel about the situation with Ivan? Because I feel like the consensus, if you look at the replies to that tweet from TW at Casuals, is that people don't really care now if they see Ivan Toney again in a Brentford shirt.
No, well, I think the only person's interest it's in if he plays the remaining games this season is probably his own in terms of getting into the England squad.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of us, I think we've got some favourable fixtures still until the end of the season, and I think it's a perfect opportunity to give a run of games to people like KLP, Damsgaard, Collins, that because they look like they're on form at the moment. Give Sharda some more minutes, just keep them ticking along and prepare for next season. If he doesn't want to be here, or if there's a very unrealistic chance of him being here next season, then I think it's in our interest to start preparing for next season. Because to be honest, if he did come back in, I can see him coming in for Lewis Potter probably, and Wissa will go out on the left, and it's just taking minutes away from someone who I think needs the minutes and could be very promising going into next season if we just give him the time now and the run of games now. So yeah, I don't necessarily think we need to see him again, but I do think we will see him again because I think Thomas Frank backs him very much.
Craig, where are you with it?
I wouldn't be bothered if Ivan left. I wouldn't really be bothered again if I didn't see him in a Brentford shirt between now and the end of the season. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because I feel like the football that we play is so much more aesthetically pleasing, is much more enjoyable, is much more attacking, is much more fluid than when he is on the pitch. Ivan Toney is a target man striker. We all know that. We all know that's what he does best. The ball goes into him, he flicks it on, he holds it up, he brings other people into play. When we don't have him in the team, we have to be more creative with the chances that we create and the opportunities that players have to create for themselves and others. Ivan's a route one striker. Get the ball to him, he makes something happen. When he's not on the pitch, we're exciting, we're quick. I don't think we've played as well as we did since the Fulham game when we won 3-0 at Fulham, which again, obviously he wasn't part of because he was banned. But it was quick, it was free-flowing football, it was exciting to watch. And I just feel like we've kind of hit that point where, unfortunately, Ivan's off the field antics has set the tone of his move in the summer, where people are getting to the point where they would rather him just be gone. Just get it done, just get him gone so we can move on. I'm feeling this is a very Ollie Watkins-esque scenario when we all thought we was going to get another striker in, but Watkins ended up just going centre forward and then scored 30 goals or whatever it was in the Championship. And if we did that with Wissa and Bomo, KLP, Sharda, keeping hold of Neil in the summer, maybe if we do that, I feel like the football that we play has to be more exciting because we have to play differently. We don't have route one strikers in those that I just named, except for Ivan Toney. It's just more creative. It's more fun to watch. It's more exciting. It's quicker. We create more chances. It's less hoofball, which is what we were trying to do for the majority of the season without Ivan Toney in the team, but playing Ivan Toney's strengths, so it wasn't benefiting us. I just feel like we're a lot more fun to watch when Ivan's not in the team. And this isn't a criticism of him as much as it sounds like it is, because he's still arguably the best striker we've ever had, like ever. Period. He's still arguably the best striker we've ever had. His performances since coming back, he's had a few good games, but he hasn't really lived up to the expectations and hype that he set of himself before he came back from his suspension. I don't think it's a bad thing if he goes.
I agree. I don't think it's a bad thing that he goes. You're right in pointing out that his performances have underwhelmed. I feel like United at home was the only performance I've seen from him where it was like, okay, that's him at his best. And to be fair to him, not knocking the player, against United, he was unplayable and he was the best player on the pitch. I don't know. I don't know if we're a better team without Ivan. And I feel like it's harsh to maybe say that we are because he's not played for the whole season. I can't remember the last time Ivan Toney started up top in a front three. We'd have to go back a very long time. I'm pretty sure.
Before his ban.
Last season,
yeah, way before his ban. And I feel like to say that we're a better team without him until he started in a front three. For example, if we went into the next game and it was KLP on the left, Ivan Toney in the middle, and Brian Mbeumo on the right, obviously Wissa gets dropped, which would be incredibly harsh. But I don't know how that would look. So I'm reticent to say that we were a better team without him. And we've had the conversation last year, I think, when his ban came in towards the end of the season, and we were still playing good football. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
It's more just the reason I would keep him out is more just preparation for next season. In terms of who we're going to have with us. Obviously, I know we do have someone who we think might be of a similar profile to Ivan Toney coming in the summer. So we might have the option back next season. Yeah. Good sign, isn't it, in the Belgian league? I don't think you can deny that he's a very good player, but I also don't think you can deny that he doesn't want to be here, and he hasn't been very respectful towards us. So I don't think we need to make room for him in 4 games that we're not really playing for much, when we could instead use the time in our best interest to prepare for next season. I think it's difficult to say that we're a better team without him. It's very difficult to say that. It's like saying Tottenham this season has been very good, but are they a better team without Harry Kane? I don't know. It's very difficult to kind of gauge, because he's obviously a very good player.
I just feel like the football we play is better because we have to play differently when Ivan's not on the pitch. When Ivan is on the pitch, we can play Route 1 football because he, like maybe 1 or 2 other strikers in the Premier League, has that presence of mind to be able to bring the ball down and bring others into play, and the ability to do it. But when he's not on the pitch, the football has to be better to create the chances, because we cannot play that Route 1 style of football, because the players that play around Ivan cannot do the job that Ivan does.
Yeah.
So I maybe to say we're a better team without him isn't necessarily what I'm thinking, but the football that we play, I feel, is better without him in the team.
Yeah,
I think we need that
different styles.
Yeah, I think we need that, because in certain games, I mean, no disrespect to Luton, but they are one of the weaker teams in the league. I do think we do, and we did find it a bit easier to play football against Luton. Whereas there will be games, maybe not in our run-in, because we've not got the most difficult run-in, but maybe against Newcastle on the final day, for example, we might find it a bit harder to play through them. And then we might think, it would be good to have that option of going long. And also with Ivan Toney in team, it doesn't mean that we have to go long to him. I think, he's still a capable finisher, and still, can be part of that front three. But I think that there will be games in the Premier League where we do need to go longer, even if it doesn't look pretty, because we're just not as good, and we won't be as good as some of the top teams for at least a few years, until we move to Twickenham.
Going on to the next point for sure. But
I've got a point to make before we go on to that scenario, that thing that we're going to talk about. I happened to come across a video on YouTube of a Luton fan talking about the game from this weekend, And he was saying that he was embarrassed. He was saying it was a joke of a performance, that he's seen enough of this season. And one comment that he made was, "This is not the Brentford of last season." And I totally disagree with that statement from this one game. That is not the Brentford of last season. That game that we played was the best we've played since last season's success of finishing ninth. I thought we were fantastic. It's the best we've been this season, and it looked like a return to the team that we should have had without the abundance of injuries that we've had this season. So to say that that wasn't the Brentford of last year, that was the closest to performance to the Brentford of last year that we've had this season.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like, especially with the formation that we want to play, I feel like another thing that we won't know until we see Igor Thiago is that kind of the malleability that Thomas Frank has when he sets up his teams, and that when we go to a Man City or a Man United or one of these top 6 sides, we've got that option to go to a 5 at the back and pump it to a target man. And like in those games, some of the games that we won last year, we would not have won without Ivan Toney. So we're not going to know whether Thiago is going to come in with that sort of presence that Toney has. But I mean, having a striker like that is so valuable when we do go up against those teams, because I mean, we wouldn't have beat Man City twice last year without Ivan Toney. We wouldn't have got some of the results we did without having. And no slight on the guy. Like I've waxed lyrical about him when I go on other people's podcasts and talk about him. Genuinely, he's definitely the best striker in the history of our club. But in terms of the Premier League, he's up there. In terms of the best strikers in the league, he's up there. And he's absolutely amazing at what he does. And if he goes to an Arsenal or a Liverpool or wherever he ends up, he will score a lot of goals.
We did beat Man City without him once last season.
Yeah, in the game at home in the last game of the season, but they did play like a second string. They started counting.
Give us the benefit of the doubt, will you?
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a statement for you. I think that Carlton Morris would do a good job. He's a big, strong striker. He was the one that was creating problems, but Ethan Pinnock just had him in his pocket. If that was a centre-back pairing of Aya and Collins, I think that he'd have had a bit more success. But yeah, Ethan Pinnock just had him from minute one. But Carlton Morris, he would fit in, I think, quite well in our front, because he's big, he's quick, and he can hold the ball up. We saw it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we don't have Carlton Morris. We've got Igor Thiago, who hasn't scored since we signed him, but we shall see. We shall see how that turns out. I don't want to write him off. A lot of people saying, I saw people saying that it was the most rushed transfer because the Antonio Nusa deal fell through, but I'm pretty sure we've been tracking Thiago since he was playing in the bloody Brazilian league. So onto this weird rumor that started circulating last night about Brentford's potential to move to Twickenham. I was debating including it in the podcast just because I know there's truth to it, but I don't know sort of the extent of how far it's gone, or the reasons why. I just had so many questions when I saw it posted by Trevor on the GPG. I was just baffled, completely baffled. And I feel like, Dan, you followed up with a few questions straight afterwards, like why the fuck would we build the G-Tech and then immediately move out of the G-Tech? What's going to happen to the G-Tech? Why would we do this? But just some people, I mentioned it in the tweet of the week, Kenzema suggesting that moving to Twickenham or moving to a bigger stadium would be the only way that you could become a big club. It's just like, no, you become a big club by winning trophies and being successful. Doesn't matter how big your fan base is. And with the trophies comes the bigger fan base. And maybe if we won a trophy or we later on down the line we're finishing higher up the league, then you might consider either extending the G-Tech or moving somewhere else. But just like initial reaction to that weird rumor, Craig, it was just the most 2024 bingo card has just been insane this year. Fucking insane.
It kind of left everyone a bit speechless, didn't it? It kind of left everyone a bit speechless. But like Dan, like you said, made a few good points. Like, why would we do that? And I don't think that it would benefit the club in any way to do that. The only way I could imagine it slightly benefits them is the fact that the away end could hold 40,000. And they'd make a lot of money. They'd make a lot of money that way. So if Man United want to come to town and they want to bring 40,000, let them, because that's the only way I can see a benefit in them. Funnily enough, I replied to, so that's Nick Kenzema It's my mate Nick, funnily enough.
Oh, is he?
I replied to it saying we would just become a glorified MK Dons, a small club in a big stadium that we will never fill. It could possibly be the demise of the football club if we decided to do something like that, and I would be scared for the club if we did that personally.
Especially like given the history of the club. I mean, when Ron Nodes decided that he wanted to move us to Woking, I think it was, you think like moves out of Brentford would probably be out of question.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Dan, what was your reaction to it?
Well, that's one thing. I think fan power is quite strong in football when it really comes down to it. And I think if that was announced as any kind of concrete plan, I'm not sure we'd let it happen. And also, if we are considering moving to a ground that holds 82,000, which would make us the biggest stadium in the Premier League, we significantly need to grow our reputation. And whether that's by, we'd have to win things. We'd have to be in Europe every year, winning things. And okay, I like the level of ambition, if that's where we see ourselves in however many years, but it will be a long time before we're there. So I don't know why we're having talks at this stage about moving to Twickenham, because they're going to have to wait a long time for us to get there. Yeah, I mean, I can't see this going anywhere. It's extremely random. Yeah. Whoever at Brentford came up with this idea and even thought it might be a good idea, I'm a bit worried about them, to be honest, because it's very odd. Like, what made them think, oh yeah, that would be a great idea, even though we just got this new stadium up the road?
Whoever told Trevor as well needs to have a long look at themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. There's not too much to say about it at the moment. It was kind of big news last night, and I saw a few people tweeting about it this morning. But we'll move on to Everton. I feel like there's so many questions around it. We won't know anything more about it until something concrete is said about it. But I think at the moment it's just kind of speculation and hearsay. So we'll move on to Everton. We're now undefeated since the international break. 5 games undefeated, 2 wins on the bounce. I think that was only the second time this season we've recorded back-to-back wins, I want to say off the top of my head. I think the last time would have been Burnley, Luton and Chelsea, I think. So how are we feeling ahead of it, Craig? I'm going to pull up the table whilst you're chatting.
Funnily enough, I've got it up on the other screen myself. Do you know what? I'm going to say that we're safe. 10 points ahead with 12 to play for. Forest have got to go to City. Forest are at home to City this weekend. So you'd think that they're going to lose that. So we could go 3 points, 3 games to go. Even if we lose, being 9 points ahead of Forest. It's not a massive goal difference really to overturn, but they're not gonna score 11 goals in 3 games with Sheffield United, Chelsea, and Burnley. So I just want us to go there, play our football. I want to see the boys enjoy themselves. I want to see the fans enjoy themselves, and just come away from there with 3 points and just enjoy the day. Just want to enjoy it.
We don't have the best record against Everton though, Dan. We had a good day up there in the first season we were in the Prem, but in the Prem thus far, I think our record against Everton is pretty poor. I don't know why. I feel like Brentford's record against Sean Dyche teams in general is not very good. I remember when they were in the Championship and it was Burnley. We never used to get a result against Burnley. I feel like the Thomas Frank Sean Dyche clash normally goes Sean Dyche's way. But how are you feeling ahead of it, mate?
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty relaxed now. I mean, in terms of the league table, to think that Luton will win four out of 4 when they've only won 6 out of 34, and to think that, assuming Forest lose to City, that they'll win 3 out of 3 when they've won 7 out of 35. In terms of Everton, I think go one of 2 ways. Obviously, Everton play Liverpool before we play them, so we've got more of a rest in between. Either we'll not be having any pressure on us and we'll play with freedom, and we'll get to express ourselves, and that will work in our favour. Or Everton, it also depends how Everton react themselves, whether they'll see it as their opportunity to make themselves safe, how they'll react to the pressure around that, either positively or negatively. So I think it will depend on that. But we've got nothing to lose, and I think we can just go out there and try and play football.
You said about not being safe till safe. We could be safe before we even kick a ball on Saturday. Because
I think we're safe anyway, to be honest. But yeah,
if Luton if Luton don't win at Wolves, then we will be safe without even kicking a ball.
Look, hear me out, boys. All I'm saying, and I've been thinking about this since we beat Sheffield United. We go to Everton and we get a result. Fulham lose against Crystal Palace in their next game. All of a sudden, we play Fulham, and the gap from us to Fulham will then be, what are they on now? They're on 42. We play Fulham, we'll be on 38. They'll stay on 42. We play Fulham, we take 3 points off them. There is a chance that we will finish above Fulham this season if we continue this run of form. And I, for one, will be. I, for one, will be fucking ecstatic if we manage to finish above Fulham in what has been our worst season in the Premier League to date.
Especially considering their game after us is City at home.
Yeah, no, imagine that from the depths of like the relegation fight and how much we're all shitting ourselves to then being in a position where we're finishing above Fulham and being comfortable in the Premier League. That would be unreal, and I would be all on board for that. I don't know if that's wishful thinking or not, though. You two can take me down a peg, maybe. I know Palace won 5-1 against West Ham.
Fully behind it.
Yeah, nothing to lose now. I mean, there's no harm in going for it. I think we can look up for the first time this season now. We can look up instead of down and just play with some freedom, play football, take one game at a time and just see what we can do. There's not a lot of pressure on it. Just see what happens.
I was going to do maybe lineups, but I feel like unchanged after that performance. I don't think you can really change anything.
Norgard for Yanelt, maybe.
Norgard for Yanelt, maybe. Yeah, it would be nice to see Yanelt get a rest considering how many games he's played recently. And Norgard is our best player, or one of our best players has been this season for sure. So yeah, I think that would be the only change. I was going to do lineups, but considering we scored 5 goals and the best performance of the season, I don't think you need to change too much. And in that case, I think that would be a good place to wrap the podcast. Been going on for a while now. We want to hear from you in the comments below, though. Who impressed you with their performance against Luton? Would you care if Ivan Toney played for the club again? How do you see it going versus Everton? Let us know. The Elam Road podcast will be back this week with a preview of that Everton game, so do keep your eyes peeled for that. In the meantime, though, remember to drop a comment down below, like I just said, with your thoughts ahead of Everton. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Elam Road on Twitter and at Elam Road Pod on Instagram. Gentlemen, that was an absolute pleasure. 5-star Bs. Get up there.
Up the bees.